Good evening. It's great to have you here. I'm Miriam Gilbert, and I'm happy to be able to introduce Lauren Lessing, who became the 8th director of the University of Iowa Stanley Museum of Art in July of 2018. She received her PhD at Indiana University, which means that we have graduate school in common. She brings with her many years of experience working in art museums, including the Art Institute of Chicago, the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art in Kansas City, and the Colby College Museum of Art in Waterville, Maine, where she built the education department and created a host of innovative educational programs. Her parents were both artists. They were students of the Stanley Museum's first director, Alfred Wilkie, and she has loved the University of Iowa and Iowa City since her first visit here in 2002. Those connections, and in her words, the enticing opportunity to build a museum brought her here. But what do you do when the museum you've been asked to direct isn't actually built yet? Well, I'm guessing a lot of planning, a lot of fundraising, but also outreach through education. And here I speak as Lauren's student, since I've now taken 2 of her senior college courses. Their titles suggest her wide range of interests, together with an imaginative shaping of issues. In 2020, she taught a history of the American century in 8 paintings, using works from 1915 to 1978, each one of which is in the museum's collection. So we're eager to see them. In 2021, her course, Paradigm Shift, How Innovations in Science and Technology Shape the History of Art, asked us not only to look at individual artworks, but to consider them in the broader framework of scientific and technological changes. I'm still a beginner when it comes to art history, having taken my first art history course just before I retired. But I certainly appreciated Lauren's knowledge, her vision, her ability to get us to see what is happening with an artwork. And her Instagram program, Diving into the Stanley, has also made that kind of close reading and wider understanding possible for anyone with a computer connection for free. If you listen to Iowa Public Radio as much as I do, you will have the date August 26th firmly in your mind, because we've been hearing about it a lot. 3 months and a day away from tonight. Because that's when the new University of Iowa Stanley Museum of Art will have its official opening. We know that it will be an exciting place to see and to learn, and Lauren is going to tell us about how all of that is developing. Lauren Lessing.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. That is the best introduction I have had in a long time, so I have to live up to it now. So we've been very busy at the museum. We're painting, we just finished actually painting all the walls in the galleries for getting ready for the installation of our inaugural exhibition. The writing, all the written texts for the galleries are, I just got a bunch back from the editor this afternoon, and so we're really putting the planning is all done. Now we're really gearing up to install the art. Our crew of preparators and exhibition designers working with a very talented student in the sculpture program are welding together mounts to hold the African masks onto the walls. So, you know, we're really down to the details. But I want to step back a little bit and talk a bit about history, and I know that none of this will be new to any of you, probably. You're familiar with this. But at upper left, you see Owen and Leonie Elliott, who were collectors in Cedar Rapids. There was a wonderful spread about their art collection in Life magazine in 1954. And I had a real treat looking at that the other day and seeing so many familiar works, but hanging in their beautiful home. They made a deal with the University of Iowa, or rather they issued a challenge to the University of Iowa. If the university would build a collection to house, would build a museum to house their collection, they would donate it to the University of Iowa. And so this collection, which was mostly comprised of really important modern European art from the late 19th and early 20th century with some American objects, and then collections of Chinese art, jade, and decorative objects. They became the founding collection of the museum. And there'll be plenty of works from the Elliott collection on view in our inaugural exhibition. Now, the first building that was designed by Max Abramovitz, that I was working in until just a few short months ago, you see the model for it at right. And the building itself grew over the years to include the addition of this long wing, but you can still see that original Max Abramovitz shape. It's a beautiful building. And I'm thrilled to know that even though we have left it, one of the upcoming, I'm on the campus planning committee, so I get a window into these things. The fate of this building is that it will be renovated and used as a space for dance. And so it makes me really happy to think that, the dance program, there will still be art inside this really lovely building. I have a fond spot in my heart for brutalism, which is the style that this building was designed in, because I was born the same year that the museum was, and I grew up in brutalist buildings, including my high school and my public library, both of which I was very attached to. We have a wonderful collection of outdoor sculpture, including this 1973 work, Oracle, by Lila Katzen, and that work is being conserved even as we speak. This work was underwater when the flood happened in 2008. We could, and we heroically did. I say we, like I was there. I was watching on my laptop when I hit from Maine. But, many of you helped to save this collection by lifting it to safety. But the outdoor sculpture is really heavy. It's not so easy to lift. So this piece weighs 3,000 pounds. We know that because we just picked it up with a crane to deliver it to the Midwest Art Conservation Center in Minneapolis, where it is being carefully conserved. Thanks to the generosity of Don and Sherry Stock, both alumni of the University of Iowa, whose romance with one another burgeoned under our beautiful George Rickey sculpture, Two Lines of Leek. We have support to conserve 3 of the sculptures, including the Rickey, the Katzen, and work by Beverly Pepper. And then we just received an award from the Henry Luce Foundation. It was the largest award that they've given in 2 years. It was $400,000 to support our inaugural installation. And it also will cover the conservation of the 2 remaining sculptures by Trova and Mark DeSubero. For those, we're sending them to the University of Northern Iowa, which has a public art conservation laboratory. I learned that late. But students will be working, Iowa students will be working to conserve those 2 sculptures, and they will be installed in and around the museum in Gibson Square Park. We originally intended this work to be installed on the south terrace of the library, but it's too heavy. 3,000 pounds is a little too heavy for that terrace, so it will be instead nestled right next to the Nancy and Craig Willis Plaza at the entry of the museum, where I think it will look beautiful. So just another peek into the past, this beautiful rotunda space, many of you will remember in the old Museum of Art. When we open in August, there will be a film on view in our video gallery by an MFA alumna, Heidi Bartlett. And that video installation is called Downriver. And it includes documentary footage of the flood and of this room in particular when it was flooded, which is very bittersweet. But her work is quite beautiful, and I love that we'll be featuring the old building in the new building. It was the old building was a really beautiful jewel box for the display of our collection. The galleries were just, they were lovely galleries that showed the collection to best advantage. But like most museums that were built in the 20th century, it was really skewed towards galleries. So it was very gallery heavy and light on classroom spaces, light on office space and storage space. I don't know if any of you had ever been down to the storage spaces of the old Museum of Art, but they were in the basement, which is not where you want your art collection to be when you're 30 yards from the banks of a river. So we will also have an underground space in the new museum, but we're using that space for our parking garage. So, which will also serve as a catch for the water should the Iowa River ever reach us. It didn't in 2008. The site that we're on now was high and dry, And I've seen the satellite photos to prove it, so I think we'll be safe. But should another 500-year flood occur before 500 years go past, we will be safe in any case, because that parking garage will catch the water, and it would take a tsunami to reach our first floor. So just a reminder of where we came from. You know, the sandbags that were put in place to protect the museum failing here in this picture, and then the museum. But again, you know, it's true what was said in the introduction, that I, you know, came here in the early 2000s for a conference, for a library conference of all things. I was working at the library at the Art Institute of Chicago at the time, and I was really impressed with, you know, like, it's the only place I'd ever been where I saw people reading and walking at the same time. I saw one person doing that. And then after dinner, going back to my hotel room, I saw another person doing it. And I said, okay, this is a thing, because the second person was actually doing it at night. So that's a special level of commitment to reading your book. And I also bought a pair of red shoes, and I think it was being here that made me decide to finally, like, you know, throw my all into it and finish my dissertation. So it was kind of a pivotal moment for me. So when I saw on, you know, the little screen of my Macintosh computer the water rising, it was heartbreaking. It was also a confirmation of everything that I knew about Iowa City, because I didn't just see the water coming up, you know, to threaten the library, to threaten the museum. I saw lines of people, students, faculty, you know, people who just lived in and around the town, you know, in high rubber boots and rain jackets, lifting sandbags hand to hand, and then, you know, lifting precious things to safety. And I just thought, where else would this happen? And, you know, it was funny because I was watching on CNN, and the anchorwoman said, I remember her words, she said, it's uncertain whether this 150-year-old university will ever recover. And she was saying that while people were lifting things hand to hand in the water, and I just thought, of course they'll recover, you know. There's a will to save this place. So when we chose a new location, as you'll have been here longer than I have, most of you, and you will know that that was not a quick decision. There were a lot of locations that were vetted, but I'm very happy with the location that was settled on. You know, we are nestled between, again, we're on a little hill of high ground, so that's nice. We're also nestled between the main library and the wellness center. Right, so think about that for a minute. You know, museums are libraries. We are. You know, we're libraries of global visual culture, and we are here to support the education of students at the University of Iowa and the erudition of the community as a whole, just like libraries are. And very much like a library, with the new building, we'll be able to circulate our collection, even the things that are in storage, very nimbly into our classroom spaces, for people to see on request. And there's a form on our website that you can see right now, where you can go after this talk. If you want to load up our website, you can start requesting to see things. You can pick dates, and we will bring those works out for you to see. So we're like libraries, and we collaborate with the library often. We share a position now, an academic outreach coordinator who will be manning that website and making those visits happen. We also, you know, share a lot of programs with the library. But one thing that 2 years of a pandemic have taught us is that museums have an important role to play when it comes to wellness, too. You know, wellness is about keeping ourselves safe from contagion, you know, and taking care of our bodies. But it also means taking care of our minds, taking care of our emotional well-being, being with other people. I mean, I've never been so happy to be with other people. The Germans have a word for this, and you know, I forget what the exact German phrase is, but it translates to flesh hunger, which sounds really, really terrifying. But but it means, you know, this just desire to be in social places, right? I mean, that's part of what makes us human, and we're built to be with other people. And museums and libraries and campus buildings, they're public forums, and they're places where we gather. So that's an important role that we play too. And we'll have yoga classes in the museum, and we're working with an art therapist right now on a series of programs that are geared towards wellness and emotional balance using the art collection. Across the street, we have the College of Education, right? I mean, like, it just couldn't be more, it's like kismet. We're in a perfect place. And then the College of Engineering, and we're working with an art and engineering student right now, as I just mentioned, to build the mounts for our beautiful African art collection. So we're going to serve all of those locations, and we're right at a crossroads where faculty, students, staff, and people just, you know, walking to and from downtown cross by the museum every day. This would not be happening without the generosity of the Stanley family. It's a real regret of mine that I didn't get to meet the Stanleys after they made their $5 million naming gift to the building, but I am very honored to have their name grace our museum. You know, they not only did they make they launched the building project with their gift, but they have, through three generations now, this family has really created a legacy of global outreach and international education, and they care about it. You know, I just had the honor of welcoming the Stanley Foundation UI Support Organization, SUIFSO, to the museum for their spring meeting. They met in the museum. They initiated our conference room. Even before the advisory board of the museum met there, they got the first dibs. And you know, one of the students that they were supporting through his education got a Fulbright award right in the room. You know, it was like, are there cameras here? You know, it's a real honor to have their name grace our building and our museum. But the museum also wouldn't have happened without the gifts of more than 200 donors who gave donations large and small to this museum to make it happen, in exactly the same way that the old Museum of Art was built. So, you know, it's a real testament to how important this museum is to this community, and also that this community cares about the arts. I'm just going to whiz through these next few slides. Groundbreaking happened in the summer of 2019, went out to bid in July. They had trucks, Russell Construction won the bid and had trucks on site by September. This is at the lower right what the building looked like through our live cam during the pandemic, when we couldn't easily get into the building. There were a period of months there when Russell Construction was trying to keep their people safe, and so even I couldn't go to the site and see what was happening. When I finally got back into the building, the galleries looked like galleries. I screamed, and I think that the poor guys who were coming up the stairs behind me thought I'd tripped and broken an ankle or something. I would say this was what the museum looked like now, except that the landscaping is in around the building, and so that patch of earth that you see there is now all green. And the patch of earth along the wall facing Burlington Avenue is also green. And they're going to be bringing trees back soon. When they moved the trees away so they could bring the trailers in, I said, please don't cut them down. This is Iowa City. Please move them. I will hear about it if you cut down trees. And so they moved them right outside my office window at the old Museum of Art, and they tapped on the window, and they were like, you know, we're moving the trees. One of the first things that I did with the advisory board of the museum and the staff at the museum when I arrived was we created a new vision statement for the museum, one that would really help us focus on the work that lay ahead. So the Stanley Museum of Art transforms lives by connecting the University of Iowa community, all Iowans, and the world with extraordinary works of art. And we do have extraordinary works of art. I just can't wait to bring them out and show them to people again. I will say that our extraordinary collection builds on a legacy of innovative arts education at the University of Iowa. So 3 really cool pictures from the archives. Grant Wood, you know, here as a faculty member in the 1930s and realizing that there was work for young artists that the federal government was providing, painting murals, and that they needed training to do that. He built a mural painting studio in what had been a gym. So this is the provisional mural painting studio. I think somebody has told me it was like in what was an indoor swimming pool. So There his students are working away up on the scaffolding. I think he might be up there, or is that him in front? I'd have to look more carefully. In the center, Jackson Pollock, standing in the foyer of Peggy Guggenheim's rented brownstone in New York. And then Guggenheim is next to him, and they are standing in front of Pollock's breakthrough painting Mural. You know, we were the first university in the world to recognize creative work as research. We were the very first university in the world to award a graduate degree in fine arts. We beat Yale by several years, although I've heard people from Yale publicly claim that. It really annoys me. So, and it, you know, Peggy Guggenheim wanted this painting when she realized the war was over, she could go back to Europe, and it was too big to easily fit on a boat. She decided to give it to a university that offered an MFA degree. So she had two to choose from. There was Yale and us. Yale is closer to New York, so she offered it to Yale first. And Yale did not want to pay the $25 that it would have taken to ship the painting to New Haven. So we paid almost $300 to bring it to Iowa City, and I think it's been well worth it. And then at the far right, this is an installation photograph a photograph of a performance piece by Anna Mendieta, who's a student of Hans Brader, who came here and started the intermedia program. And his students, you know, of course he's very important in the history of art. But I think, you know, I want to talk about him a little bit as a teacher, because his students have gone on to be so important. And they were so ahead of their time that I think, you know, you hear people talk about them now as if they were somebody who was just making this work yesterday. You know, their work is what students in MFA programs right now are looking at and responding to. And so it's really, like when I say I work at the University of Iowa, you know, and I start listing the people that came out of here as artists, people's jaws drop. And of course, we've carried on this tradition of innovation in the arts even when we didn't have a building, in lots of ways. You know, bringing our artwork out to all four corners of the state of Iowa for traveling exhibitions through the Legacies for Iowa program, through the Stanley School program, both of which were supported by family foundations. And then we brought artists to the museum to make art. You know, we couldn't have our collection in the museum, but we could have artists doing workshops that involved students in the old Museum of Art. And so this is one of them. His name is Eric Anang Ajay. He's Ghanaian. And he is a carver of fantasy coffins, one of which that is now in the museum collection. You see it right. And then at left, here he is working with a group of university students to make that coffin. So I love the fact that we required, I think, 4 works by him, but they're also by the students who worked with him. So these are, you're probably tired of seeing these. These are the architect's renderings of what the building, I've been traipsing around all 4 corners of this country showing these to people for the last several years. But I will tell you, these spaces that you see in this picture, seeing them realized in real space has been just a source of unending joy, because I know it's going to allow us to enact this part of our strategic plan, welcoming and engaging audiences of all kinds. We're going to be able to do so much in these spaces. At left, this is the terrace and walkway surrounding the Smart Museum at the University of Chicago. I was in Chicago in the late 90s and early 2000s, and so I was there when Nick Cave was a young artist and just getting started. He has a beautiful show at the ICA in Chicago right now, if you get a chance to see it. But this is a performance that he did while I lived in Chicago of his sound suits. And dancers who, you know, were students, many of them at the University of Chicago, came out wearing these suits. They performed on the walkways and the terraces, and they didn't let the crowd just sit there. They pulled them into the performance and made them part of the artwork. This kind of engaging, immersive artwork is exactly the kind of cutting-edge work that I want to do at the Stanley. And it's the kind of performance that the Nancy and Craig Willis Terrace is going to enable. Welcoming and engaging audiences of all kinds, of course, involves students. And students are in many ways our first audience, right? We exist as a museum to teach students at the University of Iowa. And this is a group of students. We have a student engagement board and a student programming board called the Stanley Campus Council. And so here they are. They look ready to go. And they are being led by a really wonderful young woman named Ali Tokarski, who's our very first curator of student engagement. And she's an alumna of the University of Iowa herself. You know, I could sit around all day and think about things that I think, you know, 18 to 22-year-olds would have fun doing, and I would probably be wrong every single time. And I have a 22-year-old who could tell you that. So they have a budget, and they're having a lot of fun planning fun events for students during the inaugural year, including 3 bands that will be performing at our August 26th opening. This is what our lobby looks like. We discovered that you can't repeat this view that the architects created because it's just impossible to do in real space with a camera. But at least you see one end of the lobby here, and that beautiful mural that we just had installed by Odilio Dita. You can just see a glimpse of it on the right-hand side. What I really love about the photograph that doesn't come through in the architect's rendering is how filled with sun the lobby is. It really is a space that reflects our commitment to transparency. We're a public museum. Nothing happens in the dark at our museum. Everything we do to teach. And we do out in the open. And so you can't have windows open on all 3 floors of the museum when you're protecting a priceless art collection, but you can make your first floor transparent. And so I love how, you know, the Gibson Square Park and the terrace and the lobby really merge through this beautiful glass screen. And it's open to the sun on Burlington Avenue as well. A group that I really admire, you know, just to kind of talk about how we might activate this lobby with works of public art, is 123 Swing, who created this piece in Turbine Hall at the Tate Modern in 2017. And it was their sculptors, and their sculpture is interactive. The Tate not only broke all of its attendance records, it doubled its attendance records while this piece was installed. So museums need to reach younger audiences. They need to reach families. And we need to be thinking really creatively about how you do that. I love this picture. I'm not saying, we don't have Turbine Hall. And, you know, you need to be able to sit down, study, get a cup of coffee. We can't take the whole lobby up with a work of art. But I do love the idea of interactive art that engages people and immerses them. Another way to engage audiences is through a teen docent program. So we haven't created one yet, but this is on our list of things to do in our inaugural year. And we are talking with several local groups for teens about putting a group like this together. What you see here is Teens Take the Met. This is their teen docent group, and several weekends over the course of the academic year, the Metropolitan Museum of Art turns all the programming that happens on a weekend over to these kids, and they create programming specifically for their peers. And of course, we're going to do programming like this as well. We are not across the street from the Voxman School of Music, but we're pretty darn close to it. We're catty corner from it. And so the lobby was designed, or I should give a shout out to the architects, BNIM, based in Des Moines. Lead architect is Rod Cruzy. Levi Robb, Carrie Nagel, and I'm forgetting Tom's last name. It's because I always just call him and I'm like, Tom, this isn't working. But actually everything is working. There are a few little tiny things. But they also worked with an acoustician that designed the lobbies so beautifully that you can hear a pin drop at one end of that lobby when you're at the other with no microphone at all. And so it is going to be a beautiful space for the performance of music. Now, if you need assistance with hearing, we've thought of that too. There is a hearing loop poured into the floor. So if you use a hearing aid, you'll be able to tap directly into the sound system that we do use so that you won't hear any feedback. It will just go directly through your hearing aid. We would have done that in the galleries, but had we put a hearing loop in each floor in each gallery, it would have created feedback, but we did explore that. We're thinking of other ways of making sure that everyone can hear what happens in the galleries. The mural. I love this mural. We initially, I was kind of going to do the tried and true thing and go to the Sol LeWitt Foundation and have a LeWitt created, a wall drawing created in the lobby. And Laura Farron in the School of Art and Art History said, there's a wonderful young artist. He teaches at Temple University. He grew up in Iowa City. His parents were both graduate students here. He's inspired by LeWitt, he's a disciple of LeWitt, but he does his own thing, and he's also very inspired by African textiles because his parents were both born in Nigeria. His name is Odile Odida. And so when we reached out to him, he was absolutely thrilled about the opportunity of coming back to Iowa City and creating this mural, which he created with the rhythms and the sense of a walking rhythm that he saw in Jackson Pollock's mural. So this is a piece called Surrounding, and this is what it looks like now. People who walk by, during the day, at night, this piece just glows through those windows, and I love just sitting in the lobby sometimes and watching people swerve. And I hope there's not an accident, actually, but it's enjoyable to see them, react to the mural. The second artist that we're looking at for, so we really want to launch a series of public art in the lobby because we can't show our collection here, not much of it. It's too bright, right? So all that sunshine that I love is not so good for works of art. And so, we can show sculpture down here, but, when we open our light well, here's our light well on the left, which is open to the sky. It's just a stunning space. Snow falls down into it, rain falls down into it. When you stand up on the Summerwell Terrace, you can look down into it. So we're going to start with a June Konico, a beautiful 7-foot-high ceramic piece by Konico, who is a Korean-American sculptor based in Nebraska. And that'll be beautiful. But in year 2, I think we will continue this series of public art installations with a work by this young woman, whose name is Nena Akoray. She received both her BFA and her MFA at the University of Iowa. And she creates these woven textiles that are made of recycled materials. So her work is designed to dissolve. She's really interested in how plastics can be treated to make them go away instead of persisting in our oceans and on our earth. And so it'll be, I've talked to the head of environmental programs at the University of Iowa. He'll be a part of this installation. I don't know, university art museums are places for experimentation. So we are going to try this and see how it goes. And we'll learn from it. I also still very much want to bring an installation by Sam Gilliam, who, although he was not a graduate of the University of Iowa, was a student of Ulford Wilkie, the first director of the Art Museum. We have a beautiful Gilliam, that is on a stretcher that will be in the inaugural exhibition. But after painting our piece, Red April, in the early 70s, he began taking his canvases off the frames and draping them, as you see here on the exterior of the Philadelphia Museum of Art. This was outdoors, it was in the rain, it was in the snow, they did fine. I think one of those pieces would look really amazing on the wall here above the Summerwell Terrace. This Calder sculpture is not ours, and I have no idea where the architects got it. They just dropped it in there for the fun of it. I wish it were, but it's not. Safeguarding and presenting our world-class collections, of course, is what we're all about as a museum. We are stewards and also educators. And so there's the architect's rendering again of what the galleries would look like. At upper left, the Pollock, and then 2 pieces, Ibeji figures from our African collection. So this is one of my old slides. I've been showing this slide forever. But I want to show you all a sneak peek of what our inaugural exhibition is going to look like. Now, we don't have any work on the walls yet, but we've been using 3-dimensional planning software called SketchUp to virtually install the inaugural exhibition, make sure everything looks good. So when you get off the elevators, you'll be able to turn left. This is like a choose your own adventure book. You'll be able to turn left or right. And if you turn left, you'll be going into History is Always Now, which is our installation of our African art and our global art. If you turn right, you'll be going into Generations, which is our installation of American and European art. All together, it's one exhibition, and we're calling it Homecoming, which I kind of like. The university was like, what if people confuse it with actual homecoming? And I was like, come on. So the two sides of it, History is Always Now, Generations. So let's say we're going into Generations. So this will be your first view. There's our Marsden Hartley painting E, which we are having reframed with an original Alfred Stieglitz frame, very much like the one that it would have had when it was first exhibited. It's one of his really stunning and beautiful German officer paintings. It's also a painting about grief. You know, I love how this painting hangs between its celebration of life. It's very joyous, you know, all the color, you know, the sense of energy. And yet it's about a young person who died. And, you know, we are all coming out of grief in this period as we are hopefully beginning to say goodbye to the worst of the pandemic. You know, so I thought this would be a wonderful way to begin an exhibition that was really planned during COVID. Next to it is a new acquisition that I have to say was supported by the Somervilles, who are here with us right now. Joyce Somerville, thank you for making this purchase possible. I know you don't like being called out like this, but I'm calling you out like this. This is Elizabeth Catlett's Glory. It's a bronze bust of a very important civil rights activist, choreographer, and dancer, who is also a friend of Catlett's. And it is a gorgeous, gorgeous bust. We became aware of it and then were able to add it to the permanent collection. We have lots of wonderful works on paper by Catlett, who of course is an alumna of the university, because Kathy Edwards, our late great chief curator, she's not dead, she's just retired, our wonderful former chief curator, you know, went out and worked with Catlett and built a lot of bridges and brought us a wonderful collection of works on paper. But we had no three-dimensional work, and Catlett's MFA here was in sculpture. And so, you know, we wanted to put that front and center also. And then you'll recognize some others. The Lionel Feininger, the paired works behind the Catlett head are a little German expressionist painting by Gabriele Münter, and then a Grant Wood, who, you know, really started it as a German expressionist. You know, well, he started as a brilliant high school student in Cedar Rapids, you know, but he got his start as an artist in many ways, you know, with his trip to Europe in 1920, when he was really absorbing abstract German expressionism. And so when you put him together with Münter, you really see that. And then an early Philip Guston, and the wonderful Marcel Duchamp exhibition in a suitcase in the under the glass bonnet there. I think that the Elizabeth Catlett head is going to look really amazing paired with our face jug by Simone Lee, which I didn't bring a slide of that in, but I don't know if you all have been following her career, but she just was the leader of the Venice Biennale, and you know, she's kind of a rock star now. If you turn in the other direction and go into History is Always Now, you will be standing first in a textile gallery with this really beautiful South American textile, which I think, I hate to flip because I don't want to make anybody seasick, but the Hartley, right, the textile, they work beautifully together. And they both just exert a kind of pull into, you're going to have a hard time choosing which way you're going to go. And then as you move deeper into our African art exhibition, you'll find installations like this one, where Corey Gundlach, our curator of African arts, has done a wonderful job really pulling African art out of an ethnographic frame. I mean, we still will certainly say what the objects are, who made them, where they came from, but we're showing them together with the works of modern and contemporary artists. So, and I just have to say, Peju Loyola, who is a royal princess in the court of Benin, made the quilt that you see at the back, and then paired with a G's Bend quilt, a traditional Nkisi object for healing. Sickness is at the far left there, And then that is paired with a work by Wangechi Mutu, whose sculpture was featured on the facade of the Metropolitan Museum of Art recently. This is a series of works that she's made responding to these Nkisi figures. They're shoes. They're made with baked earthenware, just like the Nkisi figure itself, and they're called healers, which I think is kind of fun. And then a work by an alumnus, Dante Hayes, which another donor really helped us buy. This is a recent alumnus, and he's doing an artist residency in Omaha, Nebraska, where he's working with the same manganese glaze as is on the bricks on the outside of the building. So a really wonderful sculpture by him. And then I want you to see what Mural is going to look like. So when you come into the DeWolf Family Gallery, you'll see Sam Gilliam's Red April, you'll turn. We didn't want to kind of give away the prize right away. You'll have to go into the gallery, turn, see the Pollock, and then it will be next to Yayoi Kusama's red painting, and then Peter Volkas's fabulous abstract expressionist ceramic work, which of course was inspired by Pollock, is right in front of it. This is a dream exhibition that I want to do, where I unite the Pollock with all the works around the country and the world that were painted by both him and Lee Krasner on the edges of the canvas that Peggy Guggenheim bought for him to do this commission. Because of the work that was done at the Getty in 2012, we now can do that. We can find those paintings. We know we were able to do it by canvas identification. And we know that one of them is Pasiphae at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. So I think it would be, they need to clean that painting. I'm just pointing that out. It looks really dingy next to our Pollock. But you know, what I love is that in Pasiphae, he's still telling stories. He's still showing representational work. This is a brilliant painting, but it's still very, very influenced by French surrealism and representation. And it was only with Mural that he let go of all the stories and did something entirely new for him and really took a leap of faith into the unknown. And that is exactly why we exist as a museum, because we want to teach that. You know, taking risks, trying something new, trusting your intuition, and, you know, finding your own wings. We have 3 classroom spaces in the new Museum of Art. This is something, I taught for years in a museum where I had to transform a closet into a space, and it would get so hot that students would get faint. So I'm over the moon about these classroom spaces. Again, it just activates our entire collection, because if it's not on view in the galleries, it doesn't matter. We can still bring it out for you to see. We can still bring it out for faculty to teach with. We can still bring it out for students to see just because they want to, or because they want to write a paper about it or a poem. I should mention that there will be an accompanying publication to Homecoming that will be released in the spring of 2023. It is not a traditional museum catalog. It will pair highlights of our collection with pieces of original writing by graduates of our celebrated writing programs, the Writers' Workshop, and also the International Writers Program. And I have been reading those works as they come in, and you're going to love it. So this is one of our classroom spaces, our visual classroom. We can bring tables in, we can take them out again, we can use it for presentations. There are 16 different settings for the lights, depending on what you're showing there. And that door that you see at left goes right into storage, so we can bring things in and out very, very easily. I'll be able to do things like this. This is a workshop that I did at Colby. I created a class with a professor in the chemistry department called Instrumental Methods of Analysis. Every lab was in the museum. We know that art and art history students are going to use the museum. You know, we're going to be a little bit further away from the School of Art and Art History, but you know, they're going to come to us. We need them, and they need us. You know, we're symbiotically attached. But I want to serve engineering students, and I want to serve chemistry students and math students. You know, and so one way that I did that at Colby was through this class. So there were 5 labs, and every single one used some kind of instrument to study works of art. We took paintings to the hospital, and we x-rayed them. You know, we used an XRF machine to determine whether or not archaeological materials that had been found in Turkey were solid gold or whether they were an alloy. And we used infrared reflectivity to look at the underdrawing under this Benjamin West painting. So if you can buy an infrared reflectogram if you're a big museum like the Metropolitan Museum of Art that costs you about $50,000 and do this work. Or you can go onto eBay and buy a Sony night shot camera and hack it and then shine a really warm light on your painting and have students look through that camera and they can see right through the paint and down to the underdrawing. Because the infrared spectrum it's a long, low wave. It's heat. And it can penetrate, I mean, anybody who's been outside on a hot day knows it can go right through your clothes. It can go right through the outer layers of oil paint and see what's underneath. And so this young woman is learning that Benjamin West, even though he was the royal painter to the king, King George III, he never really learned how to draw. He grew up as a Philadelphia Quaker, and he never took a life drawing class in his life, and so there were lots of mistakes and corrections underneath. I always use this painting for the infrared reflectivity. I think it's good for students to see people kind of making mistakes and correcting them. Of course, we're going to use these classrooms for our visiting K-12 program also. And we already have 1,500 third graders signed up for tours in the fall. So we have a docent program that is up and running. We are accepting applications not applications, if you want to be a docent, just tell me. You can be a docent. We are going to be launching a new docent training program for our next cohort of docents in September. So we are not letting moss grow under our feet. So if you want to be a docent, talk to me afterwards. I'll give you a card. There's nothing like seeing an actual work of art. We're going to be using our galleries as classrooms too, both for adult education, for visiting classes of visiting school children and university students, and for families with young children. And this is what our galleries look like. Well, I would say that it's what they look like now, except that the galleries have now all been painted. So it looks like this, but actually the European and American galleries have been painted a different shade of white. So probably wouldn't show up on this slide anyway. And then I really want to work with the dance department. This makes my collection managers so nervous, but I have to say, it made people nervous at Colby too, but if anybody knows where their body is in space, it's a dancer. And the dancers who are part of the dance program at the University of Iowa, they have been dancing for years and years and years. And they are the least likely people to fall into a painting or a sculpture. I think that there's something about dance being performed in galleries with works of art that is really, really special. So I'm looking for, this is at the Tang Art Museum at Skidmore, but I think we can do really exciting things with dance in our galleries as well. And finally, our grand opening will be August 26th. It'll start with a ribbon cutting at 3 p.m. There'll be cookies, lemonade, ice water, snacks for everyone. And then, we will have tours of the galleries led by docents and curators, and art-making activities for families under tents in Gibson Square Park, and then the bands will begin playing at 6 p.m. So, and then things are just going to carry on with more tours, more art-making, more programs. On Saturday, the Cedar Rapids Opera will be coming to perform arias from their Grant Wood opera, Strokes of Genius. And we will have music in the galleries on Sunday as well. We have a number of university ensembles playing on Sunday. So, and there'll be food and drink for everyone, free and just available everywhere. You can tell I'm Jewish. It's very important that people eat. Very important. So that will be available throughout the weekend as well. So my presentation is done, and I am ready to take questions if you have them. Any questions?
I have a comment.
Yes.
Okay, Joyce, you want to?
Oh yes, because we have.
Lindsay, you were supposed to be.
I've always loved art, but I have never been as enthusiastic about anything happening.
Speak into the microphone, Joyce.
Oh.
Hold on your mask. The microphone's on, it's
I've always loved art, and I've loved the University of Iowa's collection since its beginning. But the excitement that you generate and the enthusiasm you have for it is what brings all of us together as humans. And it's so marvelous to see how the connections are made. And I thank you so much for that.
Thank you for helping to make all of this possible. Other questions?
Could you speak a little bit to funding? Have you raised the money for the building? And what are some of your fundraising specific things for the future?
That is an excellent question. So we completed the capital campaign for the building in February of 2021, right in the middle of the pandemic. You know, we had a little bit of a hiccup in the pace at which money was being raised for the building when the pandemic began, but it rebounded. And I think, you know, again, people had a will to see this museum built. We were also very lucky that we had broken ground, you know, and that the site had gotten to a certain point of construction when COVID hit, so that it continued, was able to continue. And so the capital campaign is done, but we will need to raise more money to support the kinds of work that we want to do in the museum. So I'm part of a coalition of art museum directors in the Big Ten. Counterintuitively, there are 14 of us. I don't know, like, go figure that out. But you know, we get together a couple times a year, and so I'm very aware of what they're doing. I also know what their budgets are. I know how much comes from their university parent and how much comes from their endowments. And you know, we're all kind of getting the same amount of support from our parent universities. Of course, they talk to one another too, you know. So the Big Ten is one bit. Everybody knows, you know, okay, this is how much you spend on an art museum. But those are bigger museums with bigger staffs and bigger programs because they are older than us. I mean, just not to put too fine a point on it, we are a very young museum. And I am not just saying that because I'm the same age as this museum. We're a very young museum for an art museum. And, you know, the University of Michigan has been around for 125 years. So, you know, they've got a $15 million endowment. You know, our endowment is very small compared to theirs. So we have work to do to get to the place where our peers are at. But we, you know, I think, you know, I'm so encouraged by the capital campaign for the building and the support that I have witnessed and heard from people over the past 4 years now that I think we'll get there. I would love to triple our endowment by the time I leave. You know, my development officer says I have to stop saying that publicly in case I don't do it. But, you know, like that's what I want to do. I would feel very happy if I were able to do that. Yeah, so we're done with the capital campaign and we're moving forward. Yeah. And grants will be important too. I mean, I think, you know, that we have gotten in the last 2 years $250,000 from the Institute of Museum and Library Services, a $400,000 grant from the Henry Luce Foundation, and a $75,000 grant from the Terra Foundation. That's all been in the last 2 years. And so I think it's very important for us to always be writing grants. We just wrote a grant for the Mellon Foundation that I'm very hopeful about. So I think it's our third try. You know, we applied once when I first got here, didn't get that one. Applied a second time last year, didn't get that one. Now I kind of feel like I know what Mellon wants, you know, and so third time charm. Everybody keep your fingers crossed for me. Other questions? Yes?
Do you have any, can we just give you the mic? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Do you have any informational literature around that we can look at?
About the museum?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I should have brought some with me. We are, well, you know, it'll be out of date. We're publishing new informational literature. We're going to have gallery maps. I can tell you all about them because we just designed them. They are 6-fold maps and there'll be a poster on the back. So I wanted students to be able to take something and then hang it in their dorm room. Or, you know, for you all, you can hang it on your fridge or whatever, you know, and then I think, we publish a magazine, and that I could have brought. I should have brought a great big stack of magazines and passed them out. I'm kicking myself now. But we're not going to publish a magazine in the fall. We're just doing too much. But we'll publish, and you know, people are going to be too busy to read it, having fun at the museum anyway. But we're going to publish a calendar of events that you'll be getting right around the time we open. And then we will publish another magazine in the spring. So, yeah. Thank you. You're welcome. Other questions? Yeah, over here. I feel like I need to stand in a more centered place. I'm giving one half of the room more love. Over there.
I would just like to echo Joyce's comment in terms of the excitement. And I would also like to, you reminded me of, we had a provost who went to a Big Ten conference in Michigan, was standing in the, this is what he reported, standing in their art museum and saying, oh, I wish we had a building like this. And the president of Michigan turned and said, we'll trade it for your collection.
Yeah.
So apparently we now have the building and the collection.
Right.
Thank you.
Well said. Any other questions or comments? Well, thank you all so much for coming out tonight. And I'll put my mask on and answer any questions you can ask me. Thanks so much, everybody.